I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Lexington County School District 3 Board of Trustees regular monthly meeting. It's Tuesday, August the 9th, 2022 at 6 p.m. and we're at the district office. Let the minutes show that Miss Derrick, Miss Burgess, and Dr. Gunner are absent, and Miss Carey is joining us via teleconference. We'll have a Pledge of Allegiance first and then a prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your wisdom as we begin this meeting. And as decisions are made that affect Lexington School District 3, we thank you for being our source of guidance. Please be with our students, faculty, and staff as we begin a new school year, and continue to be with us and guide us all in making this school year great. We ask these things in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Next up is approval of our agenda. Board members, you have had a chance to look at the agenda, and if without objection, we will approve it as presented. Hearing no objection, the agenda is approved as presented. Next is section 1.5, approval of the meeting minutes for June the 14th, 2022 regular board meeting and the July 19th, 2022 special called meeting. Once again, you've had a chance to look at the meeting minutes, and without objection, we will approve them as presented. Hearing no objections, the minutes from those two meetings are approved as presented. Takes us to section 2, our consent items. First up is our financial report from Ms. Roden.
Good evening. You all received your July statement in your packet. On the cash analysis, the item worth pointing out is where they've lumped together the EFA, EIA. They rolled up those monies, the little over $1 million. You're going to start seeing that as one lump sum. We will still receive a few EIA funds, and I'll break that apart as we go further. Do you have any specific questions at this point? We haven't spent a great deal of money since we're just 1 month into the fiscal year. We're still receiving bills and accruing them back to prior for any expenditures as of June 30th. Do you have any specific questions or anything?
Any questions for Ms. Roden?
Mr. Kaufman, one question I had was the difference in the vocational amounts, 6,700 versus 1,700.
We claim those quarterly. Those are expenditures that we incur each quarter. That's Perkins money, the federal vocational money, and that's just what we claimed as of June 30th that came in July. So we claim all the federal funds quarterly. You'll see a lot next month come in the federal projects.
Okay, so it's quarterly.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. That all? Okay, thank you.
Ms. Roden. Next is section 2.2, our superintendent's report. Dr. Atkinson.
Thank you. I just want to update the board on a few things from the summer. First of all, I'd like to mention that we received a grant from SARA. That's the Center for Educator Recruitment, Retention, and Advancement. This is earmarked for rural school district recruitment, and we received the sum of $80,336 to be able to target, obviously, for recruitment, but other things that can be used for to pay for certification fees for those going through an alternative education certification route, or helping with practice scores, or also to supplement or provide support for our mentor teachers and our induction or our first year teachers, also for graduate work. So we were excited to hear that and to receive that money. A question that I have received several times throughout the last couple of weeks are, when is graduation? So graduation, just to go ahead and put it on your calendar, is Thursday, May the 25th, 2023 at 7 o'clock at Panther Stadium, pending no rain as we had this year. The only thing I want to mention about COVID is that our message this year, following the DHEC guidelines and Also, just going through the recommendation from the State Department of Education is that if you are symptom-free, you need to be in school. And that's all I have on COVID tonight. Ms. Roden and I went through some intensive interviews with Moody's and Standard & Poor's a few weeks ago so that we could receive a rating for the district, because the general obligation bonds from the bond referendum will go to market actually tomorrow. And so just to update you on the ratings we received from Moody's for the general obligation bonds, we received the AA1 rating. That's the highest rating in the AA category, and it's one step below AAA. That is still a high quality and a very low risk rating. For Standard & Poor's, we received 2 ratings. For the long-term rating, we received a AA, which is one step below AAA, and the underlying rating for the overall credit program, we received an A+ rating, which is there, a couple steps below AAA, but also, overall, it's the middle of an investment grade category. So again, we received good ratings, and those go to market tomorrow. We were surprised by an act that passed through the South Carolina legislature this year. School Board Association, it was under their radar. It was under the radar also of SCASA, and it was Act 236, and it eliminates some tax assessments or tax liability for a few things. One thing is motor vehicle registration for disabled veterans, also some things for telephone companies, but the one we were surprised at that looked at first to be significant reduction in our tax revenue was for, and I'll read it for you, all farm buildings and agricultural structures owned by a producer in the state that are used to house livestock, poultry, crops, farm equipment, or farm supplies. The original estimate that we received was $338,535 in lost revenue, but then it was revised to say in assessed value, big difference. So in $338,535 in assessed value, all right, so you know if it's commercial, it's at 6%, so you multiply that by 6%, and our millage for debt services for next year goes to 94.8 meals. So you multiply that, and anytime you multiply by meal, you have to turn right around and divide by 1,000, so that ends up in $1,925 in lost revenue, a little better than $338,000 that we were initially received. So again, just if you hear about that, there's a little bit of reduction. There was a new proviso passed in this year's budget, 1.96, that requires reporting of formative assessment data. This is required 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring, for students in grades 1 through 8, and we have to report scores in reading and mathematics. And obviously we use MAP, and you'll see some of our MAP scores from the past year in just a few moments when Mr. Potts gets up and speaks on that. Just kind of want to point out the difference between summative and formative assessment. At a very basic level, a way of making an analogy for this is that summative is like an autopsy. It's a little too late. Informative is like blood work, trying to determine underlying causes that you may be causing some symptoms. So, MAP is a formative assessment. Other summative assessments we talked about, I think last month, those are embargoed. So our SC Ready, SC Pass, ACT, SAT, end of course, those things are summative, and those are embargoed most up through October 15th. But the penalty for not reporting or not administering and reporting formative assessment data is that the State Department of Education will withhold 10% of EFA funding from the district until that data is received. I want to highlight the summer activities at the primary school, mainly for our 4K students and also our summer reading camp. We had 4K students that participated in our summer enrichment program or extended school year. That was a big success for those students. They had a great time in developing their literacy and also not regressing. Ms. High in the district, we were able to collaborate with the Department of Education, the Early Learning Department, and Ms. High was able to visit all those students that participated and give them bags of literacy and learning materials to continue throughout the summer. Now, as far as summer reading camp, we had 94 students in grades 1, 2, and 3 that participated in summer reading camp. Jennifer Richardson was our lead teacher. She coordinated the event and just did a marvelous job. We had 10 teachers that taught in summer reading camp. We also had a monitoring visit by the State Department of Education on June 27th, and we received the highest rating for our summer reading camp of a 4. And some areas that they noted that of significance was our small class size, our engaged students with positive teacher and student interactions and relationships, effective individual and small group instruction, efficient use of our instructional time, and just an overall print-rich environment that they highlighted as of note. Our district was invited to participate in a personalized learning conference, one-day conference in Columbia on July 28th. The guest speaker, author, researcher John Spencer was the keynote. And as you remember, we're one of 3 districts in South Carolina that's been recognized as a lighthouse district for personalized learning. We had 52 teachers that participated in the one-day conference, and just kind of summarizing, the focus is on creating creativity and project-based learning to be able to to get away from a one-size-fits-all into personalized learning based on skills and needs of our students. And last, Maggie Ellis, our new assistant administrator at the high school, was selected to be a fellow for the South Carolina Department of Education profile of the South Carolina Graduate Competency-Based Fellows Cohort. That's a long title. But she was selected. It's a 2-year intensive study to work on the profile competencies that line up with the profile of South Carolina graduate. Dr. Erin Roberts just completed her first cohort, and that will be a great asset for us to be able to continue successfully implementing the 12 competencies. And that's all I have to highlight for this month. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Atkinson. Takes us to section 3, public participation. Do we have any cards? No cards. Okay. We'll move on to section 4, our information items. 4.1 is Mr. Farley from Contract Construction is going to give us an update on the high school and primary school projects.
Yes, thank you. This evening, I'm Kyle Farley, Vice President of Contract Construction. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of where we are with the primary school tonight. We've been working with Jumper Carter Cease a good bit on this one. We've got some DD, or design development documents put together and put an estimate on that. And we're ready to present our GMP 7, which includes the early site work package, concrete package, and structural steel package, so we can begin work on the primary school this fall. What you see up here now is the floor plan of the addition at the primary school. It includes a new cafeteria there in the center, the new kitchen on the right side, and to the middle and the bottom is the new media center. This is all facing the bus loop in the back of the school, and then obviously the bottom side of it faces the courtyard where the playground area is, and then once we're complete, you'll see that courtyard area, the paved concrete area that faces out towards the where the playground area is. This also includes some renovation work in the restrooms right there in the corner on the right side, or the left side, as you can see. You can flip over to the next page. Anyway, all right. So, Stevie, can you flip over to the next one for me? Again, so right now, our GMP 7 is again the early site work concrete and steel package is approximately $1.2 million of the overall budget of $13.4. That's going to leave us, as you can read there, around $5 million for the addition. And then also leads, which is we've working with Jumper Carter to make sure we stay in our budget there by modifying window sizes, working on finishes, finalizing everything on the design there to make sure we stay in our budget for the addition. And then that leaves us a little over $6 million for the actual renovation work. That scope is still being defined. I think Jumper Carter sat down with district personnel recently and worked on an overall plan of what we're going to do there, but we still have the $6 million for the renovation work as well. So at this point, that's what we're planning to do to move forward with the work in the next couple weeks. So, any questions?
Question?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is section 4.2, our assessment accountability update by Mr. Potts.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As you all recall, during the 2021 school year in Lexington 3, over a third of our students elected to participate in remote-only learning form of instruction. And even though the other two-thirds of the students, especially those in middle and high school, utilized the face-to-face instruction, they were hampered with the fact that half the year they were really only doing 2 days of school much of the time. So our experiences in Lexington 3 may be slightly different than what's in most of the other districts across the nation. We all experience some sort of rolling school closures, quarantines, staff, student absences, and different types of interruptions that impacted the school year. Some of the reports that I've read indicate that students during that period of time lost 3 to 6 months of instruction, sometimes indicating 9 to 10 point losses in standardized test scores. And certainly it makes me wonder, especially as we were stepping into last school year, the 2021-22 school year, what were some of the lingering effects that really impacted some of the unfinished learning. Last year, in front of you, I reported 2 findings that I found. One of them was that emerging readers especially really were hurt. We found that with some of our test scores. We also found that with many of our students in the area of math were impacted. So although much of our summary data from this year, as Dr. Atkinson had mentioned, is embargoed and will be for at least the next 2 months, I wanted to give you a glimpse of what happened with our students last year, how they were, where their performance was at the beginning of the year, and their impact throughout the year. As Dr. Atkinson also mentioned, MAP, or NWEA assessment, is a normative, interim, or formative assessment that we give to students 3 times of the year in reading and math, in grades, especially in the grades 1 through 8. Math assessment not only allows us to look at how students grow or perform or grow throughout the year, but it really allows us to be able to see how students grow relative to other students across the country. And we do that through a index called a percentile rank. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about my daughter Genevieve. Genevieve just finished 4th grade at the elementary school. In the fall, she had a RIT score of 211, and she was at the 79th percentile in math. But by the time she got to the spring, she had grown 18 RIT points to 228 and was now at the 91st percentile. I think the most important part of that isn't so much the growth that you see in RIT points, it's the fact that she grew from the 79th percentile relative to everyone else in the country to the 91st percentile. That's the kind of growth that we really hope to see in students, that they're not just growing in terms of points exactly to where they're at from, like, the 79th percentile to the 79th percentile, but they're actually moving forward across percentile ranks. And so I'm going to do that through a series of charts that help to focus on what are called quintiles. So we're going to look at the percent of students that score in the bottom 20% and the percentile between the 20th and 40th percent, to the 40th and 60th, all the way up to the top. So in 5 different areas. Obviously, this is a hypothetical. In normal years, when we look at all of our students within a grade level, the distribution looks pretty close to this. About 20% of our kids are in each one of these levels. So I'm going to start with the fall reading, and this is the percent of students that are scoring within each quintile across each grade level. And obviously the one that really jumps out to you right away is going to be in 2nd grade. So an interpretation of that is, at the beginning of the year this year, 50% of the kids in 2nd grade were scoring in the bottom 20th percentile nationwide. And so one of the things that I had expressed last year is the impact of reading, especially on our emerging readers. And you can especially see within the graphs, within the red, that the areas right now between 1st and 4th grade, students who were in kindergarten through 3rd grade at the time when COVID hit, really are the students that were most impacted, or appear to be the ones that were most impacted by COVID and the interruptions in instruction. So what I'd like to do is skip over to a chart that shows the discrepancy between how students were performing in the fall to how they're performing in the spring, and this is for BLPS and reading. And so one of the things that you hope to see is a shift in the percent of students that are scoring in that bottom 20th percentile. And you also want to see an increase in the percent of students that are scoring in that top range. And what we really see last year, from last year in terms of reading, is that we had a pretty large percentage of students that were moving across the zones. And you can see that second grade crew that started at 50% of the students in the lowest 20 percentile. We had a large reduction of those students out of that range. This is a really hard thing to do, and the impact that that the students had with their teachers must have been pretty great to have this kind of change where you have a large percentage of students that are moving. It doesn't say that there's still room to grow, but we knew it was going to be difficult to begin with. Looking at the elementary school, you see much of the same. I think one of the things that we start noticing is that as students are getting a little bit older, we're seeing a little bit less of impact across the grade levels, but we're still seeing the same thing. And by the time we're getting to 5th grade in the spring, we're starting to see things look more like what they should be, about 20% across each of those quintile zones. Looking at the middle school, we see that there isn't as much change, but we do see an increase, especially as students in 7th and 8th grade, that we're having especially more students in that top zone. So more students are scoring in the 80th percentile to the 99th percentile. And just to focus on math, the same kind of thing is true when we focus on how students were performing across grade levels in terms of their quintile performance. We notice that those areas of early learning for math are the ones that seem to have the highest needs. Once again, in 2nd grade, nearly 50% of the students are scoring in the bottom 20th percentile at the beginning of the school year. It starts to fluctuate and get maybe a little bit less as you get down towards 8th grade. But when you start looking even in the highest zone, there are very few students at the beginning of the year that are scoring at that highest percentile compared to other students across the country. So when we start looking at performance at the primary school, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade in math, we see some pretty big jumps. Our kindergarten classes, of course, was partially impacted by COVID the prior year. We didn't have a full group of cohort group attend pre-K the prior year, but we saw really big jumps in their performance throughout the year. And the same types of things are true for 1st and 2nd grade. A large decrease in the number of students performing at the bottom level and increases of students performing at the higher. 3rd grade is another really big highlight for math because we start seeing that not only are we starting the year with more than 40% of our students scoring in the bottom 20th percentile, but we essentially have the largest group that we end up having in that year are students scoring between the 81st and the 99th percentile in 3rd grade in the spring. Also big jumps when you start looking at changes that are occurring in 4th and 5th grade as well. In 8th grade, we don't see as much change with student performance when we're going up into our higher grade levels, but we do start increasing the number of students who are at performing at the highest level in 7th and 8th grade as well. Overall, what we're seeing across nearly all of our grade levels, especially when students are younger, but almost all of our grade levels, is that we're shifting the percentage of where students are at performing compared to other students nationally. And those are the kind of things that we really want our teachers to do. It tells a lot about the programs that we're having within our school, our MTSS structures, after-school programs. So we wanted to have an opportunity where we could share some of this to you. Obviously, we'll have an opportunity in the future to talk more about our standardized assessments, ones that Dr. Atkinson was referencing earlier. Anybody have any questions regarding this?
I don't know if it's a question or more of a comment. I just noticed when I was reviewing this information that overall, we do have small percentages in that upper quartile, and I know that needs to be a focus for the district. And overall, we do have the large percentages in the bottom.
Yes.
And I said quartile, I meant quintile.
Quintiles, yeah.
I'm sorry. Used to working with quartiles. One thing that would be very helpful is we do need more data so we can compare grade by grade, and also we can track students to see the growth in tracking the students. So I look forward to seeing how we do this year and comparing. And I know even if we looked at the last couple of previous years, we wouldn't be able to get a true reflection, but it still would give a lot of information for us too. But I'm just anxious to see that movement. So
We all are.
yeah.
Which I would like to point out, the growth that we have, I think is really significant, concerning, in the middle of COVID with all the positives and having to shut down.
Yeah.
And, what we want to see again is that red shrink and the blue and the green to continue to grow. So I think, our teachers and administrators need to be commended for moving a lot of students during difficult times.
Yeah.
So I do, I'm proud of the work they have done. I'm thankful. And I do want to make one more comment. Maggie, please go to the primary school in the morning. I misspoke and all of a sudden moved you to the high school. So I didn't want you to panic. So make sure you go back to the primary school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Takes us to section 5, our action items. First up will be a middle school trip, I believe. Ms. Dykes?
Good evening. I'm here on behalf of the Junior Beta Club, and we would like to ask for your permission for us to attend the State Beta Club Convention at Myrtle Beach, January 11th through the 13th, 2023. Now, this trip would be a 2-day trip, 2 days and 2 nights. The students' attendance at convention promotes collaboration and academic competition as well as leadership skills, and all of this filters into our profile of the South Carolina graduate with creativity, innovation, communication, and critical thinking skills that are involved in the various competitions at convention. We would leave school Wednesday after school and return Friday by 5 p.m. We thank you very much for your consideration, and we hope that you will grant us this opportunity so that our students can better their futures. Any questions for me?
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve for the middle school Junior Beta Club students to attend the field trip on January the 11th through the 13th, 2023 at the Myrtle Beach Convention Center.
I have a motion on the floor by Ms. Risbalt-Knight that we give approval for the Batesburg-Leesville Middle School Junior Beta Club students to attend the field trip on January the 11th through the 13th, 2023 at the Myrtle Beach Convention Center. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Baltnight. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor raise your right hand or say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very, very much.
Yes, ma'am. Next up, 5.2, first reading approval of a public participation at meetings policy by Mr. Schmidt.
Good evening, members of the board. We are continuing to work on policies and updating them, and tonight we bring first reading approval for policy BEDH, public participation at meetings. It was last updated in August of 2018. It has been reviewed, and recommendations for changes have been made by our attorney. If you remember, the purpose of board meetings is to conduct official school or school board business. Board meetings are held in public and not designed to have spontaneous dialogue with the audience. So this policy establishes a process for orderly public participation in school board meetings. It establishes a maximum of 30 minutes to be set aside for a school board to hear from our community, and that way we can limit the amount of time and not let it go on so that the meeting can continue to take place to do the public meeting needed for school business. And then it also establishes a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. So if you do the math quickly, that would allow for 10 speakers to have 3 minutes apiece. Any questions?
Mr. Kaufman, I have a question.
Okay.
This new policy would say a maximum of 30 minutes. Have we had a maximum in the past?
No, ma'am, Ms. Carey. We have not had a time frame limit amount. So if we had 20 speakers, and I think we were allowing 5 minutes in the past, it could just continue to go on and on.
So I just wondered if 30 minutes was even too much. And I say that because some of our meetings tend to go so long.
I apologize. I didn't understand that, Ms. Carey.
She said if she thought maybe 30 minutes was too long because we didn't want meetings to go very long into the night.
Well, that would be up to the board.
If we could take that under consideration.
I would suggest lowering that from 30 minutes maybe to, if you want a time limit on it, maybe to 20.
At this point, I probably would suggest we give first reading approval, and then we research and talk about the effects that the 20 minutes versus 30 minutes might have, and then we can adjust for the second reading. Everybody else okay with that? Ms. Carey, you okay with that?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the administration's recommendation to grant first reading approval for policy BEDH, public participation at meetings.
I have a motion by Mr. Baltnight that we accept the administration's recommendation to grant first reading approval for policy BEDH, public participation at meetings. Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Ms. Baltnight. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor raise your right hand or say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we go into executive session to discuss personnel matters.
Have a motion by Ms. Baltnight that we move into executive session for discussion of personnel matters. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Baltnight. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor raise your right hand or say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We are in executive session.